Hi all, welcome back. In this video I'm going to slice this handle with a compound surface, so that's slightly different to the last one. And the compound surface, it might be a little bit tricky, so I'm going to see if I can make it as simple as possible. So I'm going to start with a right plane. Just to remind you, this is a configuration, so I've created a particular configuration that goes back to simply a boss extrude, cuts out, puts in some chamfers, and then a draft. And then I've got this single sketch. So let's just edit the sketch to show you what's going on. Right, so I've created a spline, which I've made sure that the spline, that point and this point are vertical. Okay, and then I've added in some dimensions because we will need to use them to adjust slightly, right? So that's just height and width, and they, of course, because it goes across the center line, you only have to enter the dimension in once. You don't have to do it twice across the widths, and then also over here it's once because everything is mirrored. So whatever I do on the left-hand side is automatically done on the right-hand side. So this one here is very important, this 130 at the bottom. That controls where the straight end begins or ends, and then this spline continues. So the spline is just made up of 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's a style spline, just in case you want to know which one I used. So it's that one there, just a straight bezier. Right, so that's the guide curve. Okay, so that's going to be our central backbone, if you will. And from here I need to create a series of planes. So I'm going to go to the right plane, and I now want to create some multiple copies of this plane. So if you hold the control button down and you drag this out, you'll get a copy appearing, and then I can adjust on the left hand side in the design tree or in the properties bar. I can adjust how far I want that, so I'm going to say 35, and then I also want to have a couple of copies. So instead of doing this repeatedly, I can just say how many copies I want. So in this case, just make it 3. 3 is enough. We need 4 in total. So that's great. Right, now I'm not really happy with where these sit. I actually want this one to be much further out. So you'll see that for each plane you have a dimension added in. I'm going to drag this out roughly to the edge, and then I'm going to double click on it or click once and edit feature. And I want that plane to be touching that point there. So the first thing you want to do is just put parallel instead of putting a dimension, because the dimension locks it in. So it's parallel, so you can see there it's parallel. And then go to the second reference and wait till that point appears. And there we go, the plane is now locked to that point there. This is going to be important because my sketch is also locked to that plane in a sense, because I've locked the end of it, that could sort of this sketch here. That point there is locked, no, it's that point there is locked to that line. So those are coincident, and that's important for the sketch. Let's do the same with this one here. In fact, that's pretty much where I want it to be. So what you can do is, if you want to drag it slightly in or out, you can. But I'm happy with it as it is, and that one I'm also happy with it as it is. I need to just get this one visible. No, not the top plane, the right plane. Let's just hide that one. Okay, so there are my 4 planes. So I'm going to start a sketch on this plane. So say sketch, and I'm going to do the usual. Now I'm going to drag this upwards, but that's not ideal. I'll show you why in a minute. You actually want to drag it downwards, just so it's out of the way, but let's show you why that's problematic or could be problematic. And then start a sketch. So I'm going to start with a line like this. Oops, and that has attached itself. Let's go all the way across. All right, so I'm going to put in a symmetric relationship, and then I want, actually doesn't really matter, make sure this line goes right the way across and extends beyond the borders, 185, because that's going to be our plane. And then we want a height, so let's put a height in here of 11. And I'm doing 11 because actually, I wonder, I think this might have to be taller, but right, so that's my line fully defined, and now I'm going to put in another sketch. I'm going to put in a 3-point arc, so just put the 3-point arc in roughly like this. I don't know of any shorter way of doing this. If you want to get those two ends to be symmetric, you have to click the two ends and the line, and there it is symmetric. And then I want to just extend that, so shift drag, and then I can just get rid of that. And then another part of the sketch would be to put in some fillets. So I've got it at 25 at the moment. Make it 35. So make it fairly large, something like that. Say okay. Right, and so thus far everything is defined as I want except this piece here. Now don't do anything to this. We need to now exit the 2D view and go into the 3D view, and we need to go back to this sketch and just make sure it's visible. And I want that point there to merge with this line here. But the problem with this center line being in the way is that I could click on that and it might introduce a midpoint arc or a connection of some sort. So if I then click on that point, which is what I'd have to do, I'd have to select just that point and click on that, hold the shift button down, and then go pierce. It might not do it, but if it does, fine. If it doesn't, just drag this out the way so it's downward so it doesn't get in the way. Okay, so those two are pierced, and I need one more dimension here. I need a width, so let's just go with that width there. Oops, and that's given us an angle. Right, I'm not sure why that's working as it is. Let's try in this view from there to there. There we go. Right, so make that quite wide. I'm going to make it 140 or something like that. Oops, that's too long. 240, 130. Yeah, right. So I'm going to get a gentle curve on the end there, which I can adjust later. In fact, I think that's why this should be 11, not 14. If you're following what I'm doing here. Let's make these bigger as well. So let's make that 55. Okay, so there we go. We've got our first sketch. Now, what I want you to notice about the sketch is it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments. You need to try and keep your sketches with an equivalent amount of sketches. So you can go from 5 to 3 or 5 to 1, but if you go from 5 to 4 or 5 to 2, you're going to get problems. I won't be able to explain that in this video, but just trust me on that for now. So I want that sketch now to appear on this plane here. So I'm going to scroll down to where that sketch is on the design tree, click on it, say Control C so that it is now being copied. Click outside in the graphics area, click on that plane and say Control V, and you'll see it drops that sketch into this plane. So minimal amount of work. Let's edit that sketch. Go normal 2 just to see what we're doing. And I should now be able to control this, but I think if you try and alter this, so let's just do that, you'll see what's actually happening is that the dimension and line itself is just coming downward. So what you need to do is grab this line and just drag it up until it reconnects with that 0 point and goes black. Okay, so now my dimension line is going from the center point upwards. The rest of the dimensions and relations should have carried through. So I'm going to leave this as it is, and then just go into a 3D view and see if we can do the same thing again. So I need to wait until I can find that midpoint. There we go. Click on that. Hold the shift button down and click on that one, and then get the make pierce thing to appear. And the sketch goes dark. Okay, so you can control, here I can control the width, or I can control what I prefer to do, I'm just showing you alternatives here, is I want that to disappear and I want to control the curvature instead. So I want to make this much steeper, so let's make it 240. So that'll alter it. Okay, right, so let's exit that sketch and let's do the same thing again. So I'm going to click on this sketch, go Control C, click in the graphics area, click on plane 17, say Control V. That sketch will now appear on that plane. If you make a mistake, let's say for instance you inadvertently choose this plane and you say Control V, we now have two sketches in the same plane. So there's the one and there's the other. They're both in the same plane. And you'll see that it'll appear by this little minus sign. What you can do is, if that's in the wrong plane, you can click on it, say Edit Sketch Plane, and then just select another plane, the one you want, and say OK, and there we go. Right, so let's edit this one. I think here, yes, unfortunately we will have to go back and just make sure that the center line is attached again, so it goes black. There we go. And then we can double click this, use the Alt button to just scroll this up a bit, so make sure it's about 18. Okay, so you can see these lines are fairly evenly spaced. I can adjust that here, so let's just go make it steeper, something like that. And then go into the 3D view, find that midpoint. You really definitely have to have the point. You can't have the line. So there's that point selected, there's the line. Make sure it's the line underneath. Sometimes you might select an adjacent line, then it won't work. And then we should be able to say pierce, and the line goes black, and bingo. Right, so let's do it one more time. I'm going to say Control C, click on the graphics area, click on the right plane, Control V. Let's edit this. I'm going to go normal to. Just drag this out and reattach it. Double click on this. Should be able to hold the Alt button down. Let's get this to go to about 21 maybe. Everything else should be in place, so that now I can just find that point. There's the point there. And then here you need to be careful to pick the correct side of that sketch. So hold the Shift button down. It's this side, the left side. So make pierce. The sketch goes black. And so we're all ready. So going to the surfaces commands and select Lofted Surface. And now you need to just be a little bit careful to select the same end. So, I mean, I'll show you what goes wrong. You'll select this end, then you'll select that end. And you'll see that this blue line goes from one end to the other. Then I'll select that end, and then I'll select that end. If that happens, it's not a problem. You can just drag this to that point and drag that to that point. If things are going well, you'll see the plane appear. If they aren't, it won't appear. So we do need to control two more factors. So I want to control how this surface extends from this line. At the moment, it dips down slightly. I don't know if you can see. It's kind of not going straight, right? So if I get this drop down to go down, the start end constraints I can control at the start. If we say normal to profile, you'll get this purple arrow, which controls how much influence the sketch has on how far it extends outward. So I'm going to overextend it just to show you what to watch out for. So if you click on this button here, you'll go out by small increments. And then once you get to, I think, larger increments, it'll go by 3, you see 3 to 4. So see what's happened here? It's actually gone so far that it's folding the surface in on itself. So just pull that back, and it still isn't doing a nice curve here. So pull it back to somewhere where it makes sense. To, I think, 1.8 would probably do it. Yeah, that's looking okay. All right. So then do the same thing on the other end. So we're going to say normal to profile. You'll see there's a purple arrow here. Leave that at 1, maybe a little bit more. There we go, just to give it a bit more influence. And then we're going to try and see if we can use this center guide curve just to control what happens on that shape a bit more. And in this case, it's worked. Sometimes if your curves are too closely spaced or some of the geometry doesn't work, that won't work, then you won't be able to select it. In my case, it has worked. I've got it. Okay, so I'm going to just not delete, I'm going to hide all of these planes. Right, hide all of those planes. And I want to hide that as well. That sketch. Okay, so here I've got a plane. You can see it extends beyond the part that I need to cut in all dimensions, but I want to now get it to mirror. So I'm going to go to front plane. No, it's right plane. That one there. Click on your mirror button. If it's not in there, just type mirror in the top or go to features. I think it's somewhere around here. Linear pattern. No, it's not there. Forget where it is. Anyways, I've got mine in the head-up display. So I select the plane first, and then I go to mirror, because then that drops the mirror plane in there instead of having to find it here. Go and select it. So it's a bit of a shortcut. And then here it'll say normally features to mirror is what it'll default to. Make sure you select bodies to mirror. So it's this one here, and you'll see it's mirrored it. And you just say okay. Okay, so you've got two planes now. We need a single plane, so go back to the surface, or a single surface, sorry, not plane, and say knit surface, and then just select the two of them, and then say OK. Right, so you can go to the top here, under surface knit, you'll see there's a single surface body. Prior to that, let's just show you how that works. So there are two here at the moment. Another way to knit them is just to select them both, hit the knit surface, and then it'll have placed them into the dialog box. Right, so there's my single surface, and all I need to do now is to cut this surface. So that out. Got to go to surfaces, got to go to cut with surface, and then you can select that. But make sure this is heading in the right direction, upwards. Say OK, and there we go. So let's just hide this one. So I've got a compound surface which is coming all the way to the end, and if I need to adjust that, I can. Okay, I'm going to stop the video here, and the next bit will be how to add some of the features in there, and then the one thereafter will be on how to add the ribs. Cheers.